Our next presenter coming up on stage, Bob Steelhammer from Sun Capital Partners. Bob describes himself as the husband, father, aviator, digital marketing nerd, an e-commerce leader, and a world traveler. So please welcome our next speaker, Bob Steelhammer.
Thank you, Bob.
Well, thank you, Sharon. How is everybody? So this is the session after lunch, and that's always the hard one. So how many are a little bit tired? Okay, come on. How many are a lot tired? And then how many had too much fun last night? Okay, so hopefully we'll be able to keep you engaged. So why is a private equity guy up in front of a Demandware conference talking to you about retail and change? I'm going to spend just a brief time talking about private equity and a brief time about my experience so that you get the context of why I'm talking to and why I think Tom invited me here. So that's the other thing. Tom, thank you, wherever you are. Thank you very much for putting this on. You guys always do a rock star job. You and your team are always great. But back to the private equity. So how many have had experience with private equity? Okay, so some. So private equity is different than venture capital. Venture capital are the guys that fund all those Silicon Valley startups. And I'm originally from the Valley, so I get that. Used to dealing with those kinds of people. Private equity is a little bit different spin on that. We raise money to buy companies to build and grow them so that we can sell them later. Sound pretty logical? So when you think about a private equity firm, there's three components to a private equity firm. There's the fund guys, not to be confused with fun. These are the fund guys that manage the money. And they think of a big accounting firm. That's really what they are. The second group is the deal guys. And those are the guys that have about a 2-minute attention span and buy and sell companies. They're always buying and selling companies, always looking for the next deal. And then the third component of a private equity firm is, and most good ones have these, not all of them have these, are the operations team. And the operations team, in our case, in Sun Capital's case, are the people that get the companies after we buy them, and we're responsible for either turning them around, fixing them, and growing them. And my responsibility is I head marketing, a brand newly created position 3 years ago for Sun Capital. And so very simply, my role is to help the companies that we buy be great at digital marketing and e-commerce. Now you guys are going, well, how did he get to, that's a weird position. How do you come to something like that? Well, I'll just give you a brief background again, not to give you my resume, but to let you know my frame of reference and how I think about things. I, at heart, am an operator like every one of you in the room. I, at some level, have run pretty big e-commerce organizations. Prior to joining Sun, I had my own firm. It's a management consulting firm that did mostly telecom consulting and retail consulting. So in Europe, we did the e-commerce strategy for Vodafone, company you might have heard of. And then before the acquisition, we did the e-commerce strategy for Nokia in Helsinki, company-wide. And in the US, we did retail consulting with companies like Neiman Marcus, J. Crew, Petco. We ran OfficeDepot.com as a company for a year. That's the 7th largest e-commerce internet retailer. And then before that, when I had a real job, really work, I ran AT&T.com, one of the largest telecom companies on the planet. And before that, Singular.com, we worked with Steve and Company to the first 3 iTunes phones and the first iPhone. And then before that, ran Motorola.com. Before that, ran B2B for all of IBM. So a little bit of context here. I've been where you are and can certainly appreciate it. So what I want to talk to you about is this concept of right-sizing for retail growth. Now, you see the different emotions up there? I promise you will go through every one of those as part of this transition. And we talk about this thing called omnichannel. And omnichannel means many things to many people. In reality, it's a pretty simple idea, but it is a very complex implementation, if you will. So pretty simple, but it's different. Not all shoes are alike. So let me give you the quick definition of what I think omnichannel means, and it really is a very simple buy anywhere, fulfill anywhere. Now, why is that important? Well, because as Daniel talked about before, it's changing the way we think about retail and the way that we approach retail. And from a private equity firm, we have to think about the retail companies that we own. We own about 65 companies, about 25 are CPG and retail together, so a significant part of our portfolio. And we have to think about what this means in areas of operations, in areas of finance, in areas of investment. So we think of it as a very simple concept, but is it really? I mean, when you think about how things can go right or things can go wrong, our friends over at Google did this great video on those two experiences colliding together. Let's take a quick look at that, and it'll give you some context.
Hey, just that, thanks.
You sure?
Yeah.
Username?
Oh, Nick M.
No.
NM 1983.
No.
Zandy Pops. Sorry. Zandy Pops.
No, okay. Don't worry, I'll help. What's your postcode?
Oh, it's a GU749ZT.
Welcome back, Nick Forever.
Okay.
Please listen carefully to this bread license agreement before continuing with your purchase of a loaf of bread. If you do not, blah, blah, blah. You also agree not to use any bread-based product for any purposes prohibited by United Kingdom law, including without limitation, design, development, manufacture of missiles, chemical, nuclear, or biological weapons.
Tick.
I'm afraid you've timed out.
What? Sorry. Hello? Excuse me. Oh, yeah. Hey.
Just one loaf, sir.
Yeah, we just...
What's your username?
It's Nick Forever, but number 4, not the...
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to check that you're a real person. Could you say that for me?
It's not even a word.
Okay, how about this one?
You know what? Forget it.
Or this one?
Hippo Potter Mice.
You're in.
Great, I'm in.
£8.85.
It's supposed to be 98 pence.
Plus express delivery.
What's that?
Oh, well, it's express delivery. It's fast. So there's, standard.
Standard.
Standard delivery. That's £4.99.
Why?
Bread insurance. You didn't untick the don't decline bread insurance option.
You know what? I think I'll risk it.
It is quite close to the sell-by date.
Don't care.
98 pence it is. If you want to pop back in 5 business days, it'll be ready for your collection.
Well, I need it now, obviously.
Oh, OK. You want the take-home today price? Well, that's £3.27.
You know what? I'm going to go.
Come back soon.
I won't.
So you can see what happens when you get it wrong in the customer experience, or what could happen. And, you know, in some cases, that's not too far from the truth in today's omni-channel environment. So I want to talk to you about 3 things today, just three brief things. So I want to cover some e-commerce benchmarks for growth, and the reason I'm bringing the numbers into it is it's really important when we look at a company and we look at how to grow a company, especially in the digital area and e-commerce area. Most companies get it wrong as it relates to benchmarks. We're a belief in simplicity rather than complex. If you take the right numbers and you look at those, it makes a huge difference. The second thing we want to talk about is really the meat of this presentation. It really is right-sizing retail for growth. And I'll tell you up front, I don't have all the answers. This is about submitting a set of questions for you as a group to think about the ways that you need to think about right-sizing for retail. We'll give you some ideas. We'll give you some ideas about how to think about storefronts in the future. But again, not the answers. And finally, some takeaways so that hopefully some things that are actionable for you. So, is that good for everybody? All right, let's get going quick. Okay, so e-commerce benchmarks for growth. You know, one of the biggest things is you go in and your CFO or your CEO goes, okay, show me your KPIs, you know. And most of the time when we buy a company, we go in and, you know, we'll usually get, you know, the 20-page deck with the KPIs buried in there somewhere. And at the end of the day, what we found, and this hopefully isn't new news for you guys, is we try to keep it really, really simple. We implement this thing called back to basics where we look at you know, the basics, unique visitors, conversion, average order value, and the one that's usually missing is lifetime value. That's usually the one. If you're not measuring that today, please, 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 please start doing that because it measures your customer's experience and the lifetime that you're going to have that customer, and then the big question is how do you always extend that? So we always tell the CFOs and the CEOs, hey, it's a really simple business. It really is. I mean, the equation really is, you know, unique visitors, time conversion, time average order value equals your revenue, and you know, that minus your cost, and then you can pretty much figure out your pre-tax It's that simple, and that's the kind of stuff that we look at, and the things that we find in companies that have lost their way, they've moved away from that. They're chasing what I like to call shiny objects, some kind of the latest and greatest marketing, which is, by the way, is great, but you always have to bring it back to this. So let's talk a little bit about the European industry as it relates to the internet and internet population. This is a slide on internet population by major nations. And what's interesting to me, it's not interesting the number of users, there's kind of no surprise here, but really the red line that talks about the percent of the population that is online that is using the internet. And I think that is very telling. You look at the UK, Germany, France, and you look at the very high percentage of Europe being very, very connected. You look at European web users as well. Germany leads Europe in web users, the number of web users, but the Dutch spend more time online. Now that's important, as most of you have multinational websites, in how and where you go after people. And we couldn't do a benchmark without talking a little bit about the e-commerce forecast. This is a Forrester slide, and Forrester thinks this industry is going to grow 11% year over year from 2013 all the way to 2017, with some of the biggest areas of growth being in Southern Europe, which is kind of counterintuitive. They haven't really performed the best in the past. I mean, if you look at the numbers up there, other than Germany and Poland, you look at Italy and Spain, those are actually pretty good growth trajectories. I'm looking at the far right column where it says 2014 growth. So that's it for the numbers. Now let's talk about right-sizing for retail growth. I wish I had a story where I could come up and go, here's the formula, and by the way, I'll take a consulting fee, and I'll give you the formula, and I'll share it with you. But the truth of the matter is there is no silver bullet. Silver bullets are for killing bad guys and vampires, right? Well, nothing here, and we have to work on that. But let's talk about the facts that lead us here, and Daniel talked a little bit about these in his deck, and I'll talk a little bit about these in mine. In 2013, and this is true worldwide, overall retail foot traffic was down. Okay, no surprise, a lot of people are shopping online. In the US, retailers eked out a 2.3% sales gain on Thanksgiving and Black Friday, just those 2 days. That's the weakest holiday growth since 2009. And remember what happened in 2009? Global economic problems, remember that? So worst year since that. In the US, more stores were open on Thanksgiving. It's that weird day we have in the US where we sit around the table and eat a bird. But it's a big shopping day, the day after, called Black Friday. And this past year, many stores were open on Thanksgiving, and that pulled the sales forward from Black Friday. And so we saw sales on Black Friday, sales fell 13.2% from the previous year because of that pull forward. And we'll talk about some strategies. At Sun, we talk about treating Black Friday as Black Week, Cyber Monday as Cyber Week, and making sure you treat each day as one of those with different offers. So foot traffic overall down 11.4%, and then foot traffic for the combined Thanksgiving Black Friday period rose 2.8%. So together it got bigger, but on those days that we counted on, like Black Friday and Cyber Monday, they were down. To prove that, here's kind of the Sun Capital. I can't give you exact numbers, but I can give you percentages. So year over year, brick and mortar growth was 11.7, a little better than the industry. Our e-commerce growth was 33 and change, about a third better, way better than the entire industry, for a total retail growth of 13.5. Now, why is that important? It's important that, e-commerce obviously is growing great, and everybody in this room cares about that. But you look how small the e-commerce bars are in comparison to the brick and mortar retail. Brick and mortar retail, yes, it's slowing down, but it's not going away. So we have to think about what to do with that brick and mortar retail. So here's the problem set. So consumer buying patterns are changing. Everybody believe that? If you don't, you shouldn't be in the room. They're changing in a way we've never seen before. I mean, I love the video Daniel had of the 1967, whatever that was, and the 5 computers. I mean, it looks like some of the programming offices that you walk into, and they have the multiple screens and stuff. And I love the shopping, and I love the idea that the husband gets the bill. I mean, so consumer buying patterns are changing. Why? And I think we just had a great presentation on the why. It's because of technology, and mostly because of wireless broadband and the broadband speeds. I mean, again, this anytime, anywhere, in your pocket. And then probably the biggest reason, if we were to define, is consumers no longer have to go to a store to do, we believe there's 5 things that you do online. People learn, shop, buy, or self-serve. The 5th one being talking about it or sharing. And consumers no longer have to go to a store to do that. And so that's a big deal. So if you believe all this, if you bought into this, then here's the complex slide. This is the hypothesis that we're working with at Sun Capital, and I think a lot of retailers are working with. This is, if the balance between the amount of physical and retail space and e-commerce investment required to support a given P&L, so the investment you have to support brick and mortar, the investment you have to support e-commerce, is a certain level. In other words, think about your percentage of online sales versus brick and mortar sales. If that's true, if that's shifting, then the mix has to change. I mean, it's simple math. And so how do you think about changing that mix? And again, I told you, no silver bullets. Silver bullets are for bad guys and vampires. But we do have some ideas on how to reimagine your storefront. And these are some of the initial things that we're thinking about as a private equity firm to move closer to that goal as retail, physical retail, we think winds down, maybe not all the way down, and e-commerce grows. So one of the things we think about is stores as showrooms. And the Tesla Motor Cars is a great example of that. I mean, this isn't a mock-up. This is an actual physical store for Tesla, where it's not in that auto row that you drive to that has 6 different car dealers and has the service section and the sales section. It's actually a showroom where you go in and configure your car, and you can either buy it then or go home and complete an e-commerce transaction. So think about your retail presence as a showroom. And a couple of our retail companies that we own, Scotch and Soda here in Europe, as well as Vince in North America, we're really taking the idea of a showroom for our stores, where you walk in and you see the goods and services, and the service rep helps you either order them online or goes to the back and gets them for you. And again, it's about merchandising. The second thing is we think using retail storefronts as a communal place, a place for a community to develop. What comes to mind there is Starbucks or the corner coffee shop here in Europe, where people go, and it's not just about buying the coffee, it's about having that communal experience or having a coffee with someone that creates that sense of community. And you think about that in retail, how do you create a communal space in retail that's relevant to what you sell? And again, no one answer, but you have to think about what that is and challenge yourself about how you create that community. Stores as fulfillment center. I mean, this is the old buy online, pick up in store, but this is going to grow dramatically. I mean, we're looking at some of our larger retailers and looking at even maybe reconfiguring some of the retail space for a mini fulfillment center in the back, because you have to have a place to, pick, pack, ship, rather than just have the store people do it. And then identifying, discrete store resources that can implement this for us. And we're seeing that in several of our companies. And then finally, stores as manufacturers. The restaurants come to mind. I mean, we own several restaurant chains, La Place here in Europe, mostly in the Netherlands. But think about 3D printing. Think about where that is today and where it might be in 5 years, where you order something online and it's actually manufactured in the store, and then you get to go pick it up. Think about that for the brands that you own and the brands that you manage. And then stores as billboards. I mean, this is a big one for us. It's something you can do today. I mean, this is one of our brands, Scotch and Soda. And think about it as physical out-of-home advertising. Use that wall space that you have. You see it a lot. So what's the future role of stores? I mean, we talked about some ideas. A couple here are discovery. Use it, figure out who your customer is. I mean, most of you know them really well. And create opportunities to have a space to discover something new. They can be used for entertainment. I mean, we have a retailer in North America called The Limited. It's a pretty big retailer. And we just starting up a deal with a U.S. TV show called Scandal, which is scandalous, but it's actually doing very, very well. And we've had scandal nights in the stores where we come in and we'll preview what Kerry Washington's going to wear on the show that night, and you wouldn't believe the uplift both in foot traffic and in sales. People want to, and we've replicated that digitally as well, where when Scandal airs, we'll start showing what's going to be shown that night, what fashions are they going to wear, and they can buy the look. And this is just something we've started in the last couple of weeks, and it's very powerful. Again, another Demandware platform too in the U.S. And then finally, a place to build relationships, and let's not leave out the transactions. You know, retail stores, it's really important that you complete that transaction, but a place where people can build the communal portion where they build relationships. So I am out of time, but I'm going to give you my takeaways. And my takeaways really are, the way people shop and think about shopping has changed. I think everybody gets that. Everybody get that, right? Okay, we're the after lunch crowd. I mean, I'm not going to get to the people that had a really good time last night, but the ones that are just a little bit tired, we'll get that. And then physical stores remain an important source of information, but are being challenged by digital. And that's kind of a duh. I mean, it really is. I mean, but it's huge, and you have to start thinking about it now. It's almost too late. I mean, you need to start thinking about what are you going to do and how are you going to transform your business as it relates to physical stores. And then social media is starting to influence the offline shopping, but the influence varies widely. One of the things we thought early on was social media was going to be, social buying, social commerce was going to be huge. There's a lot of people that still believe in that. I'm not one of them. I think social media is going to be one of those things for customer service and branding. If you don't get it right, remember that share part I talked about, learn, buy, shop, self-serve, and share? People love to share bad experiences on social media. And so if you don't take care of that'll affect your whole business model. And finally, retailers and brands need to approach digital in a different way. And that's really, if you don't take anything else away, you need to look at your stores, you need to look at digital, you need to not look at them as two separate entities, but as the customer experience. Instead of the inside out, you have to look at it from the customer in. Do we have time for questions, or are we?
Running behind on time. So,
No worries. No worries. You can find me afterwards?
Yeah, I mean, if you've got questions for either David or for Bob, then they'll be available at the end of the session. So feel free during the networking break, which we have as the very last piece of the day, to reach out to these guys and ask any questions that they've got. So thank you very much for that, Bob. That was great.